Hi, I'm Melissa May, and this is Little Book of Confessions, a podcast about the stories we keep, the truths that shape us, and the messy, beautiful in between. What started as my journal turned into a space for raw conversations, anonymous confessions, and unfiltered reflections on life, work, identity, and everything we're not saying out loud. If you're figuring it out as you go, you're not alone. Let's confess, because some secrets deserve to be told. Trigger warning. Little Book of Confessions is a space for honest, unfiltered storytelling. Episodes may include discussions of trauma, mental health, abuse, sexual assault, addiction, self-harm, suicidal ideation, grief, identity struggles, and other sensitive or difficult subjects. Please take care while listening. Pause or skip episodes if you need to. Your well-being comes first. I don't know who else is into K-drama, but I am so into K-drama. I'm part Korean. My grandmother is Korean. Well, she passed away, and that's part of my story that I want to tell. But she escaped North Korea when she was a kid with her family, with her mom and brothers and sisters. They had to wear Japanese clothing to escape, and then they made it to Seoul, and they grew up very, very poor. She Her mom was not really capable of doing a lot, so she worked really hard to make sure that her family had food, but they would eat moldy potatoes. They were poverty-stricken. She never really talked about it that much because it was so painful for her, and I just know these stories mostly through my aunt, but, my grandmother met my grandfather during the Korean War. He was stationed over there when he was in the State Department, quote, unquote. But that's where they met, and my mom and my aunt were born there, and they moved to the States when they were kids. But watching these K-dramas, they always just touch a part of my heart, and also when I read, Crying in H Mart, I don't know if anybody's read that, but that book shook me. If you don't know H Mart, you should figure it out, find out how to get there. It is the most amazing store with everything Korean. Lots of different things are there, but it just reminds me of my childhood so much. But she was just such a strong woman. She went through so much with my grandfather. There was a lot of abuse, and she finally left him. There's a whole story around that. But when I grew up with her, she was in my life a lot when I was a kid. And then when I was living with my mom, even before I was living with my mom, she was around, and we would go to her place for holidays and vacations. My dad would take us there, but I learned how to use chopsticks before I learned how to use a fork. I grew up on all of the all of the Korean food. At Christmas, we would make just big, huge plates of kimbap. There was never any kimbap, and we'd watch The Godfather. My grandfather is Italian, Sicilian. I think she just that big was something that they did. So I don't know. We would do that. And we would make japchae, which was my favorite. I had this silly song that I made up when I was a kid too. It was "Chop Che, chop some today so you won't be dead on Friday." I don't know. It was the weirdest song, but I always sang it. And anyways, I have been watching all these K-dramas, and I miss her. I miss her a lot, and it just had me thinking about, as I'm talking about confessions and secrets we keep, it's weird to grow up when you're mixed, when you come from different backgrounds and you have different cultures that have really impacted who you are as a person. And I don't know if I ever felt, there's something that I think kids, first generation born, feel when they're grown up in older traditional ways. There is a sense of guilt and responsibility. There's certain traditions, there's certain things that you pick up along the way. And I do have a lot to say about that. I think for me, growing up in that household, there was always a lot of love, but it was like a quiet type of love. And it was also, with my mom, the love was when I made good grades and really performed well, which I always did and exceeded. There was always an environment of, we don't really talk about what's happening. We just kind of bottle it up, and we move on without discussing things, and we compartmentalize. And, so I grew up with a lot of that. So there was always the part about being the good daughter, about being the good student, being just a good, quiet person, being polite, respectful. And I learned a lot about that. There's something to be said for observing and, being polite and respectful, but there's also something that you really push down who you are. So I don't know, watching this recent K drama um about when life gives you tangerines and just seeing this like journey about how the grandparents, the moms, the kids, they sacrifice things, they make mistakes. There's hardship, there's beauty, there's deep-seated pain, but there's, like, this beautiful appreciation when you do achieve and get to do something that is, like, meaningful for you. So, I don't know, it just really made me miss my grandma. It made me think about my Korean, my Asian background, and it made me think about how growing up because if you look at me, you can tell, like, I'm mixed. I am Korean, I'm Sicilian, I'm Eastern European, I Czechoslovakian, Romanian. I have, like, a lot of different a lot of different things in me, so people can tell, okay, she's not quite white, there is a mix there, but I could walk around the world with people not knowing exactly what, but I had these values and these things that I learned that really influenced the way that I interacted in society, and, I think about the things that my grandmother would do to survive and how she like, when I look back and how she struggled so much, but she always had this desire to build a strong life for herself, and after she left my grandfather, she was a hairstylist, and she cut hair, and she would save up a little bit of money, and then she would buy a brand new house. She lived there for 2 years and then sell it, and then use that money to buy something else, and that's how she built her retirement up. And her house was always everything was white and clean, and we had to be very careful and not spill anything. But it was always filled with, music and with, again, lots of japchae and kimbap, and she would always the one thing I loved about my grandma, there's 2 things I really remember. It was she had this little dog, like one of those little toy dogs that had the batteries. It was this little white dog, and it would do flips around. And maybe if you're an '80s kid, you remember having these in your house, as toys. But my grandmother had that and she loved it. That was her pet. And then she always had samples from everywhere. She would have perfume samples and makeup samples, anything that she got from the cosmetic counters. And so we would go and dig in these big baskets and play around, and we were just little kids, and we would have so much fun doing that. I think about how she would talk to relatives on the phone, and she would speak Korean, but she would never speak Korean with us. Like, she would never speak Korean with us. Unless she wanted to pretend like she didn't know what we were saying. She would be like, "I no understand English," and, we'd be like, "Grandma, you were just speaking English." And then she'd say, "You don't no, call me grandma because until I have gray hair," but she was a hairstylist, and she always dyed her hair, so we would call her Marie. So we called her Marie till the day she passed, and I don't know, I think back to what a tenacious, strong woman she was. I think about how much I miss those moments with her. I think about going to the store with her and just, like, watching her, like, pick out the vegetables and the fish and how she would cook, and the most painful thing and I guess this is my confession here, so not only just I know I grew up a certain way, and I didn't always embrace it my whole life, and I didn't feel the call to action to be outspoken about it till later in life. But I just remember one thing that I do feel pretty terrible about, that it haunts me to this day, and I think about it quite often. There was, like, towards the end, she was getting sick, and, I thought she had gotten better, and then I remember I was at Coachella. Yes, I went to Coachella. I was in my late 20s, I went with a few friends, and I remember being there, and it was the last day. And I got a phone call from my sister saying that my grandma passed away. and I didn't know that she was really sick, and I thought she was better, and it just, like, felt like a punch in the stomach, and I just thought about what got her after all these years, this strong, amazing woman who sacrificed so much for her family, who went through this, she fled North Korea. She, like, built this life for herself. She came to America. She left an abusive man. She kept tradition and beauty and all these things alive within our family, and, come to find out she had gotten cancer and, in a horrible, I guess, adult custody, I don't know how else to explain it, battle with my aunt, um, you know, my grandmother was living in Virginia, my aunt had moved to Arizona, and my aunt had brought my grandma to Arizona with her, and I guess in the middle of the night one night, my mom went out there and took her when my aunt wasn't there and took her back to Virginia, and she hadn't been around for anyone for a long time, my mom, and, it was really, really just so terrible for me to think about that my grandma in her last days was not surrounded by my aunt, by me, by people who truly loved her and had taken care of her and that she had taken care of. And she passed away, and I reached out to my mom. One of those times where I reached out to her, where I swallowed everything past the fear, past like the fear of disappointment, the fear of talking to her, just like all of that. And I was told by her that she wouldn't tell me where she was buried, if she was buried, if she was cremated. She wouldn't. I asked her, just, can I have a little thing from my grandma? Like, I don't even care what it is, just something to remember her by more. I have a couple of things from my grandma, actually. I have a couple of Korean dolls. You've probably seen those where they're dressed in the full Korean garb, and it's really beautiful. And I have a jewelry case as well that she had given me, but I didn't have much, and my mom just told me, "Well, I'm gonna post stuff on eBay, and you can go bid on it if you want." And I guess I was just thinking to myself, you know, just how sad I was that I wasn't there for her. I felt like as her granddaughter, I wish I would have been there to give her more peace and comfort in those last days. And so again, I know I'm referring to this one show that you may not have seen, When Life Gives You Tangerines, but you see this how families just fight about belongings and about estate, about power control, and it can feel so greedy and it can feel so disrespectful. So, anyways, I was just watching this show and it just really affected me. And it made me think about my grandma. And I just wanted to talk about that because it's something that, I know we all have grandmas. Some of us have had really close relationships. Some of us haven't. I have another grandma that very, very close to, and I'll definitely talk about her more too. But for me, when I think about this, I just there's also a part of me that feels so deeply sad that I don't know my Korean family now too. I've never been to Korea. I really want to do that. And I no longer feel this disconnect from my background, from my heritage, from my family, and I really do want to tap into that more. So I'm curious if other people feel this way, if there's like, I just think it's so weird, where we have ourselves, we have our parents, our grandparents, but we don't really know much beyond that. Some of us don't even know our extended family very well. And I feel so deeply rooted in it. Like, I had this ache inside of me whenever I watch these K dramas. And I don't know, I just wanted to share that and talk about that. And, I try to release the guilt. I talk to her, I do. And I know she looks over me. And I honestly, I make, hot pot, like, probably 2 or 3 times a week. I always have kimchi in my fridge. I'd love to learn how to cook more too. I do try to do, like, a lot of cooking and stuff, but I don't know. I was thinking about that. I might be rambling a little bit at this point. But this is just something that's close to my heart. Like, I'm proud that I come from a Korean background. I'm proud of my grandmother for everything she went through, and I know the decisions she made. were not only to make her life better, she wanted to make her children's life and her grandchildren's life better. And I guess my confession is I just wish I could have been with her at the end. And I proudly, proudly talk about where I'm from now. And I am a huge advocate for people who come from an Asian background. I guess maybe I don't know if that's the right thing to say advocate for. I'm an advocate for myself. I talk about it. And when I see also situations where maybe people are being misinterpreted by maybe their reserved state or how they're interacting, I do speak up. And it actually happened to me recently. And I was talking about, well, maybe this person is this way. I come from the same background where this is how we present. And I think it's important for us to understand our background, understand different cultures, and really advocate for ourselves. But more importantly, let's just remember and love and treasure the people who raised us and really impacted how we think about the world and think about ourselves. And all I want to say is I love and I miss you, Grandma/Marie. You're in my heart forever. Thank you for listening to Little Book of Confessions. If something in this episode stirred something in you, good. That's what we're here for. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at melissamay.me. Until next time, keep writing your truth, and remember, some secrets deserve to be told.